All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking about the College Bound Counselor Signature Form. And for those of you that have been working with College Bound, helping us do the application processing, we really appreciate you coming to sit with us as we talk about how it works, what's the form and function of the Counselor Signature Form. So really quickly, the agenda for today is quite simple. We're just going to be doing a quick intro, the basics of the form, the instructions, the contact timeline, and then the resources we have available. So it's pretty straightforward. But first, who are we? Who am I? What's happening here? So I'm Yukiko. I am the program associate who does the communications and outreach for the College Bound Scholarship. And I am joined by my fantastic colleague, Rochelle Wise, and she is amazing. And she is the person who really does the vast majority of all of the counselor signature form things, the processing, the reviewing. She's amazing. So the counselor signature form started in 2018. So in the event that you have a student and they are a college bound eligible student and you have their application, and after multiple attempts of trying to contact that parent, caregiver, or guardian, you've been unable to do so. And so in those instances where that parent is unreachable, this signature form allows a counselor or somebody who does the college bound application processing at that school the ability to help that student complete the college bound application by completing this form. So essentially, it's just ensuring our students who we know are eligible for this scholarship aren't missing out on a critical opportunity, and then creating a process. So the signature form itself, it can be used by any staff person who's assisting in the college bound application completion efforts. The forms must be completed in full and provide documentation of the contact attempts and what those outcomes were. It must also include a student signed missing information letter, or MIL, as we call it for short. And the form and other resources can be found on our website. So what are the instructions for the signature form? It's pretty standard. The top half is really just including your contact information. So you, the counselor, or the school staff person, including your contact information, who the student is, including the CBS, the college bound application start date. And then from there, it's just documenting the attempts or contact attempts and the outcomes of those contact attempts. So we have it listed here. There should be at least one attempt through each available contact type, or multiple attempts at the same type if it's the only one available. So what does that mean? Really what that means is if you have the capacity to send a letter home, to send an email, or make a phone call, and those are your three options, you've made multiple attempts at each one of the available options to you. If you only have a phone call and an email that you can use, then that's what you'd use, and you would provide documentation of the multiple attempts that you've made. So whatever means that you have available, and making those multiple attempts through those means. The parents or guardians or caregivers must be given a reasonable amount of time to respond to the contact attempt. And we'll go over the timeline of what that reasonable amount of time is. It must also include that student signed missing information letter. And then the person who's completing the form must initial and sign saying, yes, this is me, and I've done this process for this application. So what's a reasonable amount of time? It's a very good question, and it's one that we get a lot. So we have a guideline. So if the college bound application was started within the time frame of September through December, a contact attempt would start after January 1st. So example would be in September through December of 2020, the first contact attempt would be after January 1st of 2021. And then it would be at least 1 month of contact attempts between times. So it's saying January 1st, you would follow up, and then another month following that. If the application is started in the months of January through April, it's very similar. It would be application started January of 2021 through April of that year. They would have 1 month's time between contact attempts. So given at least 1 month's time to respond. And then at the last third of this calendar or academic year is the May through June timeline. And that is where, if the application is started in that time frame, after May 1st, you have 2 weeks. So it's a little bit more compounded because there is the deadline approaching. So it's really just giving that reasonable amount of time. This is available on the actual instruction form on the counselor signature form. We also have this in our frequently asked questions document. So if you're thinking, I don't know what this timeline looks like, I can't remember, it's available in this PowerPoint, and we've put it in a few other places so it's easy for you to find. So the actual form itself, this is the new form that we've posted online, page 1. You'll see here standard contact information. It's asked for that application start date. And then here's where you would put in those contact attempts, right? So whatever you have available, that's where you would put in the date you attempted to contact them, provide the email address or the phone number, and what that outcome was. This is the second page. So this is where you would indicate the eligibility of the student. And then from here, it's really important. You want to include both your signature and initials, noting that that's what you've got. And then this bottom section is just really for us in our office to make sure that we are tracking and we've got everything that we need. So anything in this box is really what we need, and those documented contact attempts. Then here's an example of the student's missing information letter. I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but here's what's important. We need to have just that student signature and date. So where do we keep all of this information? This information is available on our website underneath that resources for counselors page. So this is where we keep the form. We have a tutorial, as well as we'll be posting this webinar today. And then we have a sample form so you can see, well, what does a completed form look like? And then we have that frequently asked questions document. In terms of resources, as I've mentioned, we have that frequently asked questions document, we have that sample form, and then you always have our office. We're here to help. We want to make sure that you guys don't feel more frustrated or inundated with work. We want to make sure that this process is as simple as possible. So if you have questions, we want you to reach out to us and let us know what they are. And that's pretty much the bulk of the content of today's presentation. It's just, here's the form, here's what we have, here are the instructions. And I think now is the good part, is what are your questions? Because your questions are really where we want to get feedback from you all. What do you need? So I have some questions in here, and I'm going to be referring to Rochelle for a lot of these, because Rochelle really is the master when it comes to all of this. So let's start from the top. I see here the question from Anna Hester: will the College Bound office be moving towards digital signatures in the near future? So from our office, we are not working on digital signatures. However, that doesn't mean that you cannot implement digital signature practices that allows the parent to do a digital signature in your region or district. Does that make sense? I hope so. So that's the direction we're moving towards, because our office can't facilitate providing that digital signature. Right. So if your school or your district has the capacity to implement something to get that certified signature from that parent or guardian or caregiver, that works for us.
I just want to add, as long as they're filling out the form. So we just, we do have schools, we've talked to some schools that are doing like DocuSign and such things like that. So they're sending the forms to the families, but the families do have to mark the box themselves. And then both the student and parent have to have a way to sign separately. So they're each signing themselves. So yeah, we can allow that. And then just Yokiko, real quick, I was trying to answer in the chat, but you can keep going through them. But on the signature note, we did have someone ask if they could electronically sign the counselor signature form. I know some of you are working from home and it may be difficult to print that form. So absolutely, you are welcome to complete that counselor signature form electronically and sign it electronically. Just remember that the missing information letter signed by the student must also be included. Okay, Yokiko, you can pick back up.
Oh, no, yeah, that's a great question. And then I see Brian's comment here that expecting families to have a printer is an equity issue. We absolutely agree. And so normally what we would say is, we don't expect that the parent has the capacity to print the missing information letter and to do it independently on their own at their own homes, because we provide the mailed forms to the student and their families. We do it multiple times to ensure that they have access to, and then that's where we have that sort of that feedback loop of having folks at the school level to assist in the college-bound completion effort. So we don't expect families to have that printer at home. That's why we try to provide as many means as we have available, because we are limited. We don't have a whole swath of folks doing this with us, but having folks at the school level or those additional community-based organizations supporting that completion effort. I do understand that, and we do agree. We don't expect that.
And we did just send a batch of MILs last week to the homes, and those included self-addressed count envelopes. So the families do have those paper copies in their homes with envelopes to return them to our office, prepaid postage. So we do have that.
So this is a great question. Someone asked for the ninth graders who have the extension of the deadline to November 30th, can the signature form be used for those students? Yes, it can be. There is no preclusion for the students who are coming up on that deadline. That is an option for those students. That's one where we want to ensure that counselors are communicating, because if you have the 8th grade counselor who is working with those students, and they have transitioned those ninth graders to you, you can work across your school lines to ensure that you have those documented contact attempts, right? Because we did that transition from middle school to high school. But yes, you absolutely can. Okay. Rochelle, would you love to answer this question? So what does the application start mean? Is the application, or excuse me, what does application started mean? The application is live in the portal. Yeah, so application means that there is something that you have in the portal and you can see that the application was started. There is a start date section in there so you can see when it was initiated for the student. And that's just so we know that the contact timing meets the timeline.
Right, and that can be found in each student's file underneath their demographic information. So if you go into their file, it'll say their name, the year they applied, their grade, and then underneath at the bottom, it's going to say application start date, and that's the date you want to use to determine your contact attempts. And I did see someone asked, you know, if the deadline is November 30th, we just got our list of students, how do we get those contacts within 30 days? Unfortunately, you have to go off the start date of the application. So those contacts do have to follow those guidelines. These things are written into the law behind the scholars or the form. So even if you just got your list, if you can see if somebody else has tried contacting the student in the meantime, if there's any other contact attempts, you can add to that form.
So this is also a really great question I saw in here. One, yes, we are including those self-addressed envelopes. And then the next one is, can you use the MILs that were mailed home as a contact attempt? And those are, yes. So if you've gone to our FAQs or frequently asked questions, we've actually put out there that the contact attempts could be included with the MIL sent home from our office. Normally that would not be the case. But because of remote work, remote schooling, we have indicated specific mailings home do count as a contact attempt. And then, so we did, let's see, I want to make sure because I've got lots of chats in here. And yeah, we totally understand that getting signatures is really, really challenging. This is not something that we anticipated to navigate at the end of the year. We did not anticipate that this would be where our students are, where you guys are. And so we're trying our very best to be as responsive as we can. So this is where we want to make sure that we're communicating with you, because we don't know what kind of barriers you have at your school. So it's really helpful for us to get that information from you, so that way it can inform and we can try to do our very best to mitigate your circumstances as best as possible. And then this question,
Go ahead.
sorry, really quickly. It says any staff member can sign the form. Yes, if that means that you have a teacher, a counselor, anybody who's at that school who is working with the college-bound application process, if they are in charge of that, they can absolutely use the counselor signature form. We've just called it the counselor administrator form because that's sort of where the legislation was written. And go ahead, Rochelle.
No, I was just say someone said that they're a middle school counselor, and when they look at the portal for the ninth graders, a lot of it's missing. So that's the students are moved based on where we're getting OSPI enrollment data. So if high school has reported their enrollment, they're going to move up to the high school list. So that's like Yokiko was saying, The high school counselor can see those students. So if you guys want to work together as a team, if you can get a hold of your high school, or if you're a high school counselor, get a hold of your middle school, your feeder middle schools, and work together to see if those contacts have been made. Just remember too that the parents have to be completely unreachable. So we can't use the form if they've said, oh, I can't sign, I don't have the form, or I don't have a stamp, can you do it for me? Or yeah, I'll get it into you next week, and then they don't. They have to be completely unreachable.
So this is a really great question. Rochelle, would you please answer this one? If they have 3 forms of contact, we do 1 contact for each type. And if they have 1 form of contact, do we do 2 to 3 attempts? If they have an email or a letter, are we okay to do 1 of each type, or does that need to be 3 or 4 attempts total? So
if they have an email address, phone number, and or mailing address on file with you in your system or in ours, then there has to be an attempt for each of those contact types. If they only have phone and email, well, I guess phone and mail, because most people have addresses, but if they just have 2 of those, then just 1 attempt for each of those. If they only have 1, then there has to be at least 2 attempts for that 1 type. So there has to be at least 2 attempts. It's kind of confusing, but there has to be at least 2 attempts and from each contact type available. I hope that answered that question.
I think it did. And then this is a great question. Once a parent mails back the signed form, how many days between is it likely to show up in the portal?
So that typically it's 2 to 3 weeks, especially when we get towards the end of November. We're going to see a huge, and now that we've sent the mailing to the homes, we're probably going to see a large influx. We have 1 person processing these forms, and we're all working from home. So it may be faster, but I would give it at least 3 weeks. That's what I would say is probably the best guess, just because, especially with the influx we're going to be getting right now, I think it's going to kind of take a little bit longer. And we're only allowed to get mail once a day or once a week right now. So
yeah.
If you send them through the secure portal, hopefully you all have access to the secure portal and the secure messaging system. If you need help with that, feel free to email us and we'll help you with that. It'll be easier than doing it through the chat right now. But the secure messaging system is the best way to send us the forms. We can reply immediately to tell you we've received them. I do that as soon as I get it, hopefully within 1 business day. And then it comes in faster, so they get processed a little bit quicker, and it's more secure and more efficient. So that's the best way to send them to us.
And then this is a really great question. So for the 9th grade students who've transitioned from middle school to high school, how do we recommend obtaining the student information? So this is where it's really important. We encourage you to connect with the middle school counselors if you have connections to them, but you could also connect with your college-bound regional officer through the Washington College Access Network, because they may be able to help draw that connection if you don't know who that counselor was at the middle school level. So depending upon your region, I can't tell you the specific person unless I know where you are, but the Waukegan regional officers are amazing folks and amazing resources, because they can help you draw those connections, and they're all about doing strategy and planning. This is a great question. How many times will the state be sending out the forms this year? So we send the MILs in batches 3 times a year. We've done one for the month of October. I am not sure when we have planned to do them later, but we will continue to plan to send the MILs directly to the addresses that we have on file. What's really important about that is for students that you have contact information for, if you know that it needs to be updated, if you update it in the portal, that is literally the best thing you can do for us. So that way we have the appropriate information and send it to the right address, because there's nothing worse for us is that we know that we are behind because we don't have access to that student level information, but you guys do. So if you can update that, that's really helpful for us. Okay.
I have one question, and I'll tackle this one, Yukiko, because I've been answering this in emails. Someone asked, they said they heard that if a student moves, that they won't be removed from their list unless a new school reports them. Unfortunately, that's the case this year. Typically, we can remove students if they're still incomplete. But with the current situation, and we wanted to make sure that students were getting the highest level of support from the schools as possible, and getting those applications completed before the deadline. So we have matched all students with OSPI enrollment data that we cannot override. So if a student leaves your school, once their new school reports them, then they'll move to that new school. If they move out of state to a homeschool or a private school, unfortunately, they're going to remain on your list until the end of 9th grade. Please know that does not affect your sign-up rate. That's not where we pull the sign-up rate information. So they're just going to be kind of cumbersome and maybe not the best for your accounting purpose, as you're going through the portal, but they're not going to affect anything negatively.
So this is a great question. I'm a middle school counselor, and when I look at the portal for the current 9th graders, a lot of information is missing. Will the high school counselor have the current list on their end?
Yeah, and that's what we were saying. Once that high school reports their enrollment, which all enrollment should be reported by the end of this month. Once they're reported, they're going to move up to that high school. So the high school has their new high school portal this year. So they can see the same things you are once those students move up there. So if you want to work with your high schools and just connect with them, that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, and I think what's also really the unique challenge of where we are in this year is that, so 2 years ago, the counselor signature form didn't exist. And then 2 years ago, we didn't have this overlap in years or the deadline extension. So for this particular group of students, the 9th grade students and the students who are coming up on the application deadline at the end of last year, for the counselor signature form, the timeline is really tight, and there are going to be some students that are just not eligible to have the signature form as a usable option, because that deadline is really tight, and our hands are tied because we are bound by legislation. It's not a program policy, it's actually a legislative implementation that we've got. So I understand it's frustrating, it's really challenging, and we're doing the very best we can to be responsive, but just know that we are just as frustrated by that system as you are. So we are with you on that, and we want to try to provide you with as much support as we can.
There's no need to report new students to us. Like I said, if they're in the College Bound portal, we'll get their OSPI enrollment data. So they're just they'll move on to your school once we get that data from your school reporting it to OSPI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone asked about the sign-up rate. If you can email us at College Bound, my colleague Ross would be happy to share that information with you. So you can email us at collegebound@wsac.wa.gov, and we'll have that information at the end of the PowerPoint as well.
Okay. Oh, okay. I actually made it through because I was saying I had like 28 new chats, but I was at the bottom. So that makes me feel a whole lot better that we don't have another 50 questions. But here's something that's really relevant to y'all, because some of you guys asked for this. So here's some contact. This is the main College Bound contact information. I'm going to put my name and contact information in here as well.
While you're doing that, Yokiko, just real quick, someone asked how keeping a student in the portal connected to a school which they've withdrawn from ensures that high level of support. What I meant by that is we used to not match students with OSPI data when they were incomplete. So it was just they would just hang out at a school and we would never know that they had moved on. And so they may have moved to a new school and that new school can't see them. And so they're not getting that support from the new school. With this new OSPI data that we're receiving, they should move to their new school as soon as we get that information. So it's really just based on when that school reports their enrollment, then that new school is going to get their information and see that they're in that school and that they're in College Bound. So that's what I was referring to for that.
Yeah, and we just got 2 new questions. Rochelle, would you mind, they're at the very bottom of the chat, would you take a...
Sure. So yes, we do accept photos from students if they, our email is not secure. So we don't recommend them sending us the photos, but if they send them to you, you are welcome to send them on to us through the secure portal. So we do accept photos as long as they're clear and both pages of the form, then absolutely we will take photos of the form. And then, yeah, so it looks like there were 2 questions about that. So yeah, absolutely we can accept photos of the signed form. And parents can do that as well. If you do get in touch with a parent and they would rather take a photo and send it to you, that's totally fine. And then you can send it to us through the secure portal.
Yeah, and I think I would love to just spend like 1 to 2 minutes, Rochelle, if you could run through sort of the most common things that you're seeing when folks are sending in the signature form. So like if you could have like the top 3 or top 5 things you would like folks to know, what would that be?
And just to answer one more question, yes, this will be posted on our website, hopefully by the end of the week. It's going to be on the collegebound.wa.gov site. It'll be on the resources for counselors page underneath the counselor signature form section. So, we want to make sure that those counselor signature forms are correct. Unfortunately, if they're not, we can't accept them. And if you send them through the secure portal, I will reply and let you know, what's missing. But the biggest things that I'm noticing are, first of all, the application start date isn't correct or is missing. So you want to make sure you're checking their file for their application start date. The other thing is making sure those contact attempts are spaced apart according to that chart. So again, they have to be 1 month apart for specific ones or 2 weeks apart for the other. So make sure that those contact attempts are spaced apart, and make sure that you have a contact attempt for every contact type that student has available in their college-bound application. And then the student signed MIL, that's a really key piece. So we want to make sure that's included as well. Oh, and someone keeps, I'm sorry, we missed this question. Someone said, can the student, I think they asked if they can sign using a draw function or something. So however you can get an electronic signature is fine with us, as long as the family is completing the form. If you're doing the MIL, or, the parent and guardian are signing, or excuse me, parent, guardian, and student are signing separately, whether that's a draw feature in Google or a DocuSign, however you can get that signature is fine with us. We will accept it. I'm not sure if we missed any other questions. I think that's all of them.
Okay, so we did that in about 30 minutes in a whirlwind of questions and answers. But if you guys have any other questions, you can absolutely follow up with us and let us know if you have more questions. Again, this presentation will be posted. I will include this PowerPoint. I will also include this link to the video. So if you guys wanted to come back, revisit, absolutely anytime. And then, what was that?
I do see one more question.
Oh yeah, of course.
They missed us talking about sending them home. So we've always sent MILs home twice a year. Usually that's December and June. Due to the current situation and you being unable to connect with your students in person, we have decided to step that up a little bit. So we did send another batch in October. So just last week, they should have arrived in the homes last week or this week. And they do come with self-addressed stamped envelopes for them to mail the completed forms directly back to us. That does count as a contact for the counselor signature form. And hopefully we're hoping, fingers crossed, we get a lot of them back. So then we won't even need the counselor signature form. So, and that's another thing too, when you're doing that counselor signature form, I did get some recently that the applications were already complete. So make sure, to save yourself some time from having to fill out the form and get it to us, make sure you're checking the portal to see if their applications are complete, because it's likely that we've gotten something in the mail as well. So, and yes, the mailing can be used as one of your contacts. This October mailing can be used as a contact. And I don't know when the next batch is going out. There will not be another one before November 30th. Unfortunately, we just don't have time for that and to give them enough time to get it back to us. So, we're just playing this by ear just as you are. So we'll see when that next one goes. And we will not be mailing a batch to the schools just because many of you aren't in the schools. So we won't be doing that this time. And the counselor signature form is due by November 30th for the current 9th graders. So
I only want to be sticky wicked about this because there are that sliver of eligible 9th grade students who come into eligibility in 9th grade, and those are different, right? So we have an overlapping year of students who were in 8th grade last year who had an open application or didn't get a chance to complete it, and those students are still eligible to complete it by November 30th. And then we have this new window of students who are now eligible in 9th grade but weren't in 7th or 8th grade. So when we say 9th graders, we kind of have to be cohort specific.
Yeah, so make sure you're checking their application and it will have the deadline in there. If you try to print their missing information letter, it will have their deadline. Same thing with those 10th graders. So if you're seeing any 10th graders in your system due to that small limited window of students, those are due by November 30th. And the batch went out to all students in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade who have incomplete applications as of October 1st. And they only went to, so someone asked if it was the current 9th graders who didn't get to complete in 8th grade. Yes, so all 7th, 8th, and 9th graders that are currently in the portal that had incomplete applications as of October 1st. So any that you've entered into the system before October 1st, if they are still incomplete, they got the form. And yes, you can download your copies of the MILs from the portal right now. For the person, I think the person that reached out, that's a new counselor, if you can email us at College Bound, I think that's the best way to get in touch with us, and we can get someone in touch with you to assist you. So if you email us at collegebound@wsac.wa.gov, we can certainly help you. Yes, the batch for October and June can count as contacts for any student that got them in June. So if they were entered before that, make sure you're checking their files. If you look in their file at the bottom, there's a history. It will show you if they got the June mailing as well. Any new student enrolling now will not get they've missed the October mailing. If their deadline is November 30th, unfortunately, they're not going to get a mailing before that deadline. If they're a current 7th or 8th grader, then they still have plenty of time and they'll get our next mailing. The mailing, it was not bright yellow. It was white. It came in a College Bound envelope. Our return address and logo are in the upper left of the envelope. The PowerPoint will be posted on our website, collegebound.wa.gov, under the Resources for Counselors tab. It'll be under the counselor signature form section of that page. If the deadline says August 31st, you don't have to reprint the form. We know we're tracking these students, so we'll know that their deadline was November 30th. The application start date is in their file. If you click on the student's individual file in the portal, underneath on the left-hand side, you're going to see their name, their application year. I think it says something year student applied or something like that. And then some more information about the student. Underneath that at the bottom is going to be their application start date.
All right. I don't want to say all the questions are done, because every time I say that, a good swath more come in. But if you guys, again, have other questions, you can always reach out to us, and we are happy to answer your questions, to follow up with you. I put my email in there. The main College Bound inbox is really Rochelle answering all the emails, so that's her. You can contact us anytime with questions. But we just want to make sure that you guys feel supported. We really appreciate you. We appreciate all the work that you're doing. We literally couldn't do any of this without you. And so we want to, say thank you. Thank you for being patient with us. Thank you for working with us, and contact us if you have any other questions. And the contact information for me and College Bound I'll put in there.
You got the Yukiko.
Mm-hmm.
And if the student's in 9th grade, if you're in a middle school, you may not have access to that student anymore if their high school has reported their enrollment. So they may have moved up to the high school. So just keep that in mind too. It doesn't mean that their application disappeared. They just moved up to the school they're currently enrolled at. And someone asked which website. The website is collegebound.wa.gov. I know once you type that in, it's going to change the URL to Ready, Set, Grad, but no, that is our page, and you'll see the Resources for Counselors page.
Okay. All right. Not that I want to kick everybody out, but I'm hoping that that was the vast majority of questions, that we were able to cover everything that you guys needed. If you have questions, again, follow up with us. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to stop recording, and we'll just hang out here for a minute or two, and you guys can enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for being with us. And hopefully